by adjunct professor Suvi Sarikaglio. So just to give you a bit of a background, Suvi has primarily, she has done a lot of work with adolescents and mood regulation and mental well-being as well. And I must say that there's, I mean, any party at our department when I was there in Finland is incomplete without her. As you had seen yesterday, that she's the life of every party for us. So, but at the same time, she always does some, excellent work, and we really look forward to listening to you now.
Thank you, Vinu. And thanks for organizing this and inviting us. It's really a pleasure to be here, not in the meter thick of snow in Jyväskylä, but actually here in the warmth and feeling welcomed. So I will be talking about music as a therapeutic medium, and to give you some context in terms of music as a therapeutic aspect of our lives, we can be talking about music therapy in terms of clinical work in a clinical setting with clients, or we can be talking about music in our daily lives, in which people also often feel that music is somehow therapeutic, that it's good for their health and good for their well-being. And of course, these are quite different contexts, and it's important to also understand that clinical work is different from sort of self-therapeutic use of music. But on the other hand, there is also a lot of similar underlying mechanisms or reasons of why music is health beneficial. I come from this side of things. I'm a music educator, music psychologist, working mostly with people who deal with music or use music in their daily life. But I collaborate a lot with clinical music therapists, and there is a lot of dialogical space between these disciplines. As a therapeutic medium, we can approach music from a lot of different angles. We know music is physical sound, it's body movement, as we've seen, so it's in our bodies. It's an expression of emotion. It is something that we engage in, something that we personally relate to and even feel our identities in music. It's also interaction of between people. It's communicative, like Jonna was talking about empathy and relating to others through music. It is creativity in many forms. It is cognitive processing, various kinds of attentional memory processes, pitch processing, time-related, processing-related, various kinds of cognitive processes going on. And it's also various culturally embedded meanings and significances in our lives. So it functions in such a variety of modalities, and this doesn't even cover everything. In addition to this, music is part of our spirituality, it's part of our sexuality, it's in us in so many levels and so many ways. And if we think of, for instance, a music therapy setting, this is from our lab, from a situation where we are providing music therapy to stroke patients who have experienced a stroke, and they have difficulties in speech and in movement. I can just show you what they do. So they are training, trying to find back. For stroke patients, sometimes it's hard to do these movements that go across the left and right side. And what they're doing is simple body movement, motor activity, motor cognitive processing going on there. But there's also personal engagement there. There is they're doing it as a social activity. There are lots of things going on at the same time. And here are a couple of pictures from another. It's actually kind of like a technological innovation for music education. So it's an environment, technological environment for learning music, where kids can use either iPads or keyboards or connect some musical instruments to it, and they gather around this music tower to learn music, basically. And it's done by making little compositions and so on. So there's a lot of, again, like cognitive goals for the activity to learn musical constructs and music making, but it's done creatively in a social setting, in an engaging way. It's designed based on ideas for peer learning and how that kind of interaction promotes learning. And also we've worked with ADHD children and known that physical proximity is something that actually helps people, ADHD children, to focus and concentrate. And all these kinds of different backgrounds theoretically have guided the way that interface has been built. And again, we can see that there are lots of different things going on at the same time. And this is something that it is kind of the strength and a challenge of music, that it is so multiple. And if music therapists, if we discuss with medical doctors, they want to know the ingredient or the mechanism of action, like in a pill, that why does music work? And then we come, there are lots of different things going on at the same time, and it works through a lot of channels, and it's complicated. Today, I will try not to explain or discuss all this vastness, but focus on something, and I will focus on emotions and emotion processing, and how music in that context functions as a therapeutic medium. So, emotions, they are quite relevant for music. We know that. Any studies on why do you listen to music, why do you engage in music, involves somehow in their results that music touches our emotions. I've been doing a lot of work on music as everyday mood regulation, about the different patterns or different gratifications that we get from music, whether it's just happy mood maintenance, whether it's jumping into strong sensations or discharging some bad feelings or getting comfort and solace, or different ways that we use music to deal with our everyday emotions. There's a lot of research on the emotions that music in daily life evokes. This is from our Swedish colleagues, a list of the most commonly evoked emotions in our daily life. And there is a lot of research also showing that these emotions are in our body, in our neural and physiological responses. So research on music and emotion is quite broad and active at the moment. And one thing that we can really say that one place where emotions in general, where they are in our body. They are like our heart starts to bump when we are excited, or when I go to an airplane, I'm afraid of flying. I always start to shiver a bit, and again a bump, and it's a very common feeling because I fly too much, and I would not like to fly, but then I'm happy to be relaxed in landing again. But this is not a new thing. Darwin was already talking about animals and a happy dog waving his tail, and a scared dog just freezing, and how embodied the emotions really are. So it's not a new idea. It's been there for human understanding for a long time. And as we know, music can touch this level of experience. Daniel Stern is a developmental psychologist who's been discussing music in relation to very fundamental forms of expression. He talks about vitality affects, so that we can express affect through, for instance, through body movement, through touch, through sound, visual image. That touch is something very, very like fundamental and cross-modal, a-modal concepts. So if I do this kind of figure, or this kind of figure, you can imagine that as sound or as touch, and how they differ. And music talks through these kinds of forms of expression. They are in many musical acoustic features. They are present, and this is discussed a lot in early development, because babies, when they're born, these are the of emotional we relate to others in our lives, and even newborn babies below. During the first year of a baby's life, babies become very competent in expressing and understanding emotional communication at this level. And of course, this is a level that functions also when we don't have words, or the verbal communication is somehow not functioning well in various types of clinical conditions as well. I will show one study a little bit in relation to this, and in relation to what we have been seeing about the movement research. In this particular study, we asked people to come to a lab and do a PANAS rating. It's a positive affect, negative affect schedule assessing mood state. So we asked them to rate their current mood state, and then we asked them to just freely move to music. And here I have out of our 60 participants, those two who were sort of highest on the negative affect, and on the other side I have the couple of participants who were highest on positive affect, and you can see how they move quite differently. The movement features that were related to the self-experienced emotion were so that positive affect was visible in high velocity of hands and head, and in a spread out open hand posture, and also in the complexity of movement. And what was interesting about this study in relation to this talk is that there had been prior studies where actors had been asked to take a happy posture, for instance, and they had taken happy posture, or walk as if you were sad, and they walk. But here, the people had no idea that we were interested of their internal emotions, and we had mainly university students in their regular day to come to the lab, so there was not a huge variety of what they were maybe feeling inside. The mood ratings didn't show like that there would have been awfully depressed people and people on the top of their world. So variance wasn't that massive, and still we could see quite clear differences. So something in the music made the internal, not that big differences, but some internal state to actually quite visible and possible to detect. So something in the music and in the movement to the music could convey something internal quite visibly. So yes, music is certainly in the body and in the embodiment of emotions. But it also is in reflective thought and in our conceptual understanding of emotions. So emotions are also concepts, meanings at the level of thought. And if we consider this sort of conceptual level of emotions, we know from research on emotional competence, emotional intelligence, that this ability is quite fundamental. It's a fundamental aspect of being somehow capable in emotional self-regulation or emotional interaction. It's not a unified concept. There are different concepts used: emotional clarity, differentiation, labeling. But overall, we know that it contains aspects of being attentive of emotions and then being able to comprehend the emotions, in the sense of being able to differentiate that, yeah, this is fear and not anger, and in a sense of comprehending the larger meanings of what it means that I'm feeling this right now and how that relates to my life goals. And these abilities, particularly the ability to comprehend, to identify between different emotions and understanding their meanings, that is known to relate to various health outcomes. So it's very important to our health. And in terms of music, for instance, Tia De Nora is one of the authors who has tackled this capability of music to touch our self-reflective capacity of emotions in music. He talks of music as a mirror in which we can somehow see ourselves. And she says that it's not just a mirror, but it's a magic mirror. So like a magic mirror, so we can maybe, in music, we can somehow contemplate on something that we have experienced and seeing it in a little bit of a different light, or process it further. And we have also approached music as in a context of mood regulation, and discussed this aspect of music being able to somehow provide a framework, like a arousal, affective, content containing framework in which we can put our own meanings. So it's just an affective framework, and we can put our meanings in it and process them as the music unfolds and moves us into different places and different stages. And interestingly, recent work is showing that when music listening is associated with this sort of reflective capacity, the use of so-called reappraisal emotion regulation style, so that you are able to reflect upon your experiences. If that is combined with music listening, then the music listening seems to be more often related to positive health outcomes. I can show you a couple of more concrete interview quotes from how people describe this mental processing in music in their just daily life. This is from a 14-year-old girl. I calm down in the evenings before going to sleep by listening to music, and at the same time I think about stuff that has happened during the day, because after I've thought that through, then I can get to sleep, that now these are worked out. And here is a little bit older guy. These pictures are not from these actual people, and the names are changed, but anyways, this William here says that you can somehow live through your pain while you hear someone sing sad songs. I think that for me it helps that if I'm dealing with some problem and if there's some music that deals with it, it helps me. I clearly work through my feelings through the music. So these kind of experiences are actually quite common in people's daily life of how they engage with music. So, if we come back to music as a therapeutic medium, we can see that there is something in music that maybe addresses two different levels of experience. So music definitely touches our emotional, embodied, non-verbal experience of emotion, but it also actively touches our, or it stimulates our reflective processing. And this dialogue of being able to move within this continuum is something that I think is one of the core aspects of why music is therapeutic. How music does that, I can show a few people who have been thinking of these things. Already philosophers like Susan Langer has been talking about the symbolic quality of music and the ability to music to sort of as an aesthetic expression to allow some kind of playful, easy access to deeply meaningful content. Even Ruud is a Norwegian music therapist, and he has been discussing this affective awareness that somehow music provides a variety of nuances, emotional nuances, and by that capability it might also be able to help us in conceptual understanding of these nuances. Nico Fridja from Emotion Research talks about music and other arts actually as a form of refined emotions, which are essentially conceptualized as something that contains sort of self-reflection. So you can detach yourself a bit from the emotions. So not like in our daily life, we might be so immersed with the emotional state that we just can't deal with it and can't think of it. But in art, we can see all kinds of various shades of emotions, and we are still far enough to be able to contemplate and reflect upon them. In music psychology, Sandro Garrido and Schubert have talked about the kind of the same thing with the concepts of absorption and dissociation. So in music, we are able to absorb into the experience fully, yet we are able to dissociate ourselves enough to not be just paralyzed by the emotions. Goldwyn Trevarten it takes this into also intersubjectivity, so that intersubjectivity in music is through embodiment connecting the experience to interpersonal meanings a little bit. And if we think of some very this is probably the most famous framework for understanding how music conveys emotions. It's presenting these different kinds of mechanisms that through which music functions. There are like brainstem reflexes, like if there's a loud voice, we react to that. And in music there are loud voices and we react to that. So very fundamentally physical processes. And then there are aesthetic judgments, cognitive appraisals, which are quite cognitive processes actually. So here we can see that some mechanisms through which music functions, they are more rooted in embodiment and biology, others in more cognitive processing. And these function in parallel. It is not like that one mechanism only is impacting me right now, but many of them are present at the same time. And that is where music works in this kind of dialogical, or affords this dialogical affordance of accessing these different levels. This same issue has been discussed in a little bit in my work with adolescents. This Laiho, which is me when I still was using my maiden name and was not married to my husband, who is Sari Kallio. This Laiho proposed that for young people in their teenage years, music has at least two different kinds of affective allowances in their psychosocial development and emotional development. On one hand, music is something that allows the kids to surrender to the deeply embodied excitement and pleasure even, and sensation seeking, allowing them to feel something really strongly, and young people are high in sensation seeking. And on the other hand, there is something in the music that facilitates this process of making some undefined internal experience into a concrete form. It provides the form, the structure, the words to the emotional experience. So it helps to somehow get a grasp and conceptualize what am I actually feeling, and maybe it is just the sound of music that somehow concretizes of what am I feeling. And an sort of important thing for young people is also that music is a safe way to do it. So even if you address very deep emotions that they go through in their daily life, because they go through a lot in their development at that time, there are strong emotions, and you can sort of safely allow yourself to surrender in those and then just say, well, yeah, it was just a song. So they keep their cool, and it's not that difficult to address difficult emotional aspects.